Hello, thanks for joining me for this very special edition of AM Talk on the AM Show. And we're talking to somebody who comes from a country we always call our neighbor. And we're talking about Nigeria, with a population, depending on the literature you're reading, between 165 million people and 170. And our population, that is Ghana's population of some 25 million plus, will only be enough to fill a state among one of the 36 states of Nigeria. We're talking to His Excellency Ademola Oluseyi Onofowokon, and he's also been knighted by the Methodist Church of Nigeria. And so, thanks for joining me.
You're most welcome.
Okay, thank you. Now, with all the experiences that you've had, not only observing the way politics is conducted in your country, but also across Africa, would you say that Africa, and particularly our respective countries, have brought to the fore the best of politicians to manage our respective countries?
Yeah, I'll say yes, and in some instances, no. It's not good to be in denial. But generally, I think Africa as an evolving continent and our individual countries as evolving. Let me take my country, for example. We're 54 this year, but by amalgamation, we're 100 years. It's still an evolving country. At least we are walking now, we are no longer crawling. And we've had very successful, influential, respected leaders, including the current leader, President Goodluck Jonathan. You know, he's in Africa, he's well connected, he's respected, and he has been able to move Nigeria forward. It was under his watch that Nigeria became the biggest economy in Africa. I think Africa has done very well. We're yet to get to where we're going. According to my president during the centenary address, we're yet to get to where we're going. The best is yet to come, but I think we're on the right track.
Now, let's talk about a critical issue, corruption. And it's always a nuisance issue in the news media here in Ghana. But we know that when we talk about corruption, it is also a pervasive subject in Nigeria, something that the government is also grappling with. Just some few months ago, the governor, who is no more Sanusi, of the Central Bank of Nigeria, had made certain statements categorically, which also sought to purport that perhaps the Goodluck Jonathan government was not willing to punish people he may have appointed for deeds. And it's same accusation from the opposition here in Ghana on the current president as well. And indeed, depending on which president is on. Do you think that politicians eventually, who tend to win power, become president, are very much unwilling, reluctant to punish their own ilk?
Absolutely no. In Nigeria, for example, we have different bodies dealing with anti-corruption. They were set up specifically to fight corruption. You have the EFCC, Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. You have the ICPC, Independent Corrupt Practices Commission. When you are found guilty, or if somebody writes a petition against you, these people will investigate you and bring everything to the fore. But the fact that somebody say, oh, this man has stolen money, or this man has done this, without correct facts, without facts and figure, I think it would be unfair to start vilifying such a person.
But is it not precisely why the accusation is that politicians in Africa, and we're talking about our respective countries, Ghana and Nigeria, hide behind, well, you don't have enough evidence. As a result of that, you don't have the right to accuse and perpetuate whatever crime.
Let's put ourselves on the stand. If somebody comes to accuse you that you are a thief, and the person doesn't have any evidence, photographic or paper or whatever, I mean, you can sue the person to court. Even in the United States, there has to be concrete evidence. I'm not saying that there's no corruption. Corruption is well embedded in Africa, in our different countries, everywhere. Name the country and I'll tell you what is going on there. But I think in the case of Nigeria, which I can speak for, we are doing everything to remove that cankerworm. It's very embarrassing. It was not created by the President Jonathan. His predecessor Obasanjo and Yar'Adua fought it. In fact, Obasanjo set up the bodies I just told you of. So it's not that we're not doing anything about it. Nigeria is very, very stern. But don't forget we're a population of 165, 170 million. If 1 million is corrupt, it's a little fraction, a drop in the ocean. But I'm assuring you, it might not be eliminated completely, but it will be drastically reduced.
Well, Your Excellency, just a few days ago,
yes.
You granted an interview here in Ghana on a TV station, and you specifically said you know that Ghana is corrupt. Of course, when you tend to read what the tabloids, etc., say, you also can draw those conclusions and those inferences. How do you think that respective countries in West Africa can tackle that head on?
It's not difficult if there's a political willpower. Corruption is not peculiar to Nigeria or Ghana alone. Ghana is not the worst country in Africa, in West Africa. Neither is Nigeria the worst. But the fact remains that in Nigeria, people have been prosecuted for corruption. Same here in Ghana. You remember the case of judgment debt and so many other cases. I understand somebody, I think is the chairman of CRAJ, is being investigated.
Our leading anti-corruption body is called SHRAJ.
Yes.
She is the commissioner.
The
really.
commissioner herself is being investigated.
Likely going to be investigated.
Yes. So she's not guilty yet until she's proven to be guilty. So I don't think, there's no permanent formula to take off this symbol. I mean, we can just keep trying. The Nigerian formula is what I would recommend. Set up this body, let it be very independent of the government. It must get its allocation. It must get the right officers, not political officers, not members of any political party, in office. And there should be transparency and accountability in the system, from the local government to the government of the day itself. I think if every West African country can tackle it, and then you don't allow people to come and launder their money. People should account for how they get their money. You see in Africa, you see a lot of people riding very flashy cars, living flamboyantly, committing what you call in sociology conspicuous consumption, just to be seen. They don't have factories, they don't have offices, they don't employ any labor, and they cannot actually tell you this is the source of our money. I think Africa has to pay more attention to that, and that will help us move forward.
And this very scenario you painted is very synonymous to the variables that would depict a politician in Africa. In the African setting, who starts his political career just in the next couple of years is very much driving in flashy cars, has a number of houses and fat bank accounts.
I don't think you'll be right zeroing in on politicians alone. No. The political class might have some corruption, but in the populace itself, you have so many people called so-called businessmen who have no factory, who have no offices, and they live stupendously. How do they account for such wealth in this, I won't say impoverished, but struggling economies of Africa? Even where the economy is not struggling, is it right for you to have such money and you don't employ labor? You don't have an office?
If I remember vividly, an article that was published and was sourced to the richest man in Africa, we're talking about Dangote, who also comes for your country. He says that the political class also don't tend to help the business class or the private enterprises, just because they feel when the private enterprise has developed in a certain way, they may have a lot more power as far as where power lies. than the average politician. And so the politician would always want to be on top.
I don't think I want to agree with that. First of all, let me state on the last question that if you make money genuinely and you drive a Rolls Royce or Maybach,
that's legitimate.
It's legitimate. You've worked very hard for your money. Now to the question of Dangote. I remember in one European country where I once lived, where the president of that country specifically told the economic class, not written anywhere, but it's a known fact, you keep the money you've made or stolen. It was a period of transformation. Don't come into politics. And if they try to come into politics, they are jailed. It's not because the guy is coming to use his money, but you know, when you have money, you want power. It's natural. The guy that became the president of Ukraine was an oligarch. He made much money. That's why he came. And it's everywhere in Africa. But I don't think the political class is not helping the business sector. No. Rather, they come up with policies that help the business sector to grow. How did Nigerian economy grow to what it became? It's not only the economic class. The political class did their own work.
Complementary effort, you say?
Complementary effort. So I don't think there should be a debate on whether somebody or one class deny the other. They work together. The economic class alone cannot build the economy without the political class.
Your economy, after rebasing, GDP, etc., in excess of 500 billion US dollars, biggest in Africa. Or South Africa may have decided to be on top. But if you take a look at how we have development in the top economies in Africa, we're talking about Egypt, we're talking about South Africa, etc., at least there's equitable distribution of wealth. Well, not equitable enough, but it's less equitable even in your country, which is the top economy in Africa. How do you, in turn, as a country, bridge that very gap?
There's a huge gap between the very rich and the very poor. What we have done is to invest, first of all, in basic education, to make sure that primary school is virtually free, whereas you are free to send your children to a private school if you want. If everybody has the opportunity to be educated, enlightened, they'll be able to strive to get to the top. In that way, you are gradually creating a foundation for not a utopia, but a fairly balanced base for distribution of wealth. So we've done that, and aside from that, we have created opportunity. We have what we call the National Employment Body that organizes employment for graduates, and there are other bodies that create means for individuals to set up their own businesses. I think these are some of the measures. The other very, very strong measures the federal government is saying, if we want to discuss that, it will take the whole of this program. I think our government is investing in the areas that will make the economy grow, and everybody will have an opportunity to come up.
And Your Excellency, it's a good point you make, though, because I know your government also, according to what the literature said, has adequately put in place all these policies to increase the participation of the private sector in contributing to the economy. But the argument out there is because you have the markets, you're a very big player, not only West Africa, but also now in Africa and the world. You've had all these roles you've played because of oil, etc. So you have the clout. How can the smaller countries like Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, etc. also have the clout?
Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire are not small. Please. Those are very big countries too.
Because Nigeria, for example, can decide to ban importation of certain items from Europe for the local producers of those commodities to thrive, but not easily like countries Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, etc.
I think you're mimicking President Muhammad there during the campaign. I remember him talking about banning of frozen chicken, that Nigeria can ban it, but they need Nigeria. They have to buy the oil. I agree, but You know, these are countries that are very prosperous in their own right. Nigeria is struggling to be like Ghana and Ivory Coast in terms of cocoa production. Ivory Coast does about 1.8 million metric tons.
Now, cocoa is not your mainstay.
But we are only struggling with 500 metric tons. We want to be like them too. The oil will dry up one day. The oil will dry up one day. I think those countries in their own right, using what they have, investing very well, can be like Nigeria. More so, Ghana has oil now. I believe Ivory Coast has some oil too.
So some pales against what the deposit you have in your country.
Keep finding wells. Ghana could strike it lucky tomorrow and find one single well that would turn the whole thing around to be a complete game changer. Like in Nigeria, not too long ago, we found the Agbami, which is one of the biggest, purest reserve in West Africa. So the thing is just there's the same Gulf Coast.
Nigeria, you seem to be blessed with so much. But one thing you've not been able to tackle adequately is the subject of Boko Haram. Sometimes your troops get killed up north there. More recently, there was a mutiny in which the soldiers tried to kill their own commander.
Have you been reading Nigerian news lately?
I read a lot all the time. I'm supposed to be reading, that's my work.
Do you know that 150 Boko Haram footmen defected and dropped their arms day before yesterday?
I read about that too.
Do you know that a lot of their trucks and armored cars were also captured?
I read about that too. But the accusation is that your armies usually would undertake that as propaganda because your army jets have been shot over the period.
It's not impossible. These people are well equipped. But do you know that a lot of them were killed also the day before yesterday? You know, there's a tide. Now, what happened is that we are getting good cooperation from our neighbors, Chad, Niger, and the Cameroon. So there's no hiding place for them again. In the past, once we attack them, they run away. And you can't send your soldier across the borders. That will become aggression. But now that we have their cooperation, when they go there, they chase them back. They kill them. We kill them here. Boko Haram is beginning to fizzle. In fact, I don't know, but I want to believe that it might be right. The man pretending to be Shekau was killed about 4 or 5 days ago. Maybe another Shekau will surface.
Well, we've heard
I do not know.
Shekau had been killed earlier.
Shekau is not one person. These people have a way of doing psychological warfare. When you kill somebody, they will bring another person, and that person will take that title. I want to see whether that same man that used to appear on telly and throwing his hands like this will appear again.
The argument from the critics out there that perhaps the precipitating factors that may have resulted in the eruption of a movement like Boko Haram had been that, well, there's no equitable distribution of the wealth in Nigeria, and still that is being perpetuated. And as a result of that, well, you're still going to have these problems. You may perhaps nib in the bud the subject of Boko Haram, but one way or the other will have armed movement among young people in your country.
I agree with you. We're investing heavily, trying to find solution to equity so that there will be peace. But one thing, you cannot force people to take education. If you decide, you will not force them to go to class. If you make every facility available, you encourage them, you do everything. And if those people are not interested, culturally, what do? You just keep trying so that you can expand that educated class to reduce problems. But, you know, in Africa, some people ordinarily just refuse to let their children go to school.
Perhaps in your country, you're not trying hard enough to reach the top segments who can influence the lower levels, especially in northern Nigeria. You're just not trying hard enough.
How? I don't understand that question.
If you feel that you can involve them in a lot more dialogue, then they can influence the grassroots. Is that not possible?
Those people are part of government. They have access to government. They have access to governance. They can get everywhere in Nigeria, from the east to the west to the north, you can get your people to do what you want them to do that is right for them, if there's the political willpower. the people you are talking about in the north, the political class there has tried everything possible. But if somebody chooses not to take that path, the political class cannot force them. I think the government and indeed the political class is doing everything possible, because education is the key that can unlock the potentials. We are spending a lot on education to make sure that our people from every part of Nigeria is exposed and benefits from the wealth of the country.
And not too long ago, indeed, the West, I don't know whether I can conclude and call them your allies in the West.
Which West?
Well, Western.
Nigeria is a non-allied country.
Well, we do understand. Not necessarily in the movement of being non-aligned or being aligned.
And I'll also quickly tell you, India is.
Try to give you some assistance.
India is our biggest trading partner, followed by China. So where is the West?
But we do understand all that you're saying. But as far as Boko Haram is concerned, you need a lot more assistance, won't you?
Not really. We can actually tackle it on our own. You'll find a few American advisors there, a few British advisors, but on our own as a country, I think we can tackle it.
Do you think
we have the resources?
Has your government been very much unwilling to accept a lot more assistance international, either from the US or from the UK or the European Union in its entirety?
France, US, United Kingdom have all come to our aid in terms of advisors.
That's technical assistance?
Yes. In terms of advisors, technical assistance, and we accepted. But foreign troops on Nigerian soil, no. We are going to do it ourselves. And the soldiers that were captured, I mean the Boko Haram people that were captured the other day, and the ones that surrendered, it was
Why don't you think having foreign troops in your country is also possible? Why can't that be a possibility?
Because we're a very proud country, and we know we have the resources and the men.
At the end of the day, pride will take you nowhere.
It's not a question of pride, empty pride. We have gone out to help other countries. Why can't we help ourselves? You understand what I'm saying? Nigeria is one of the biggest contributors to peacekeeping in the United Nations. Nigeria is, along with other countries in the West African sub-region, keeps the peace. Why can't we keep peace at home? We have the money, we have the resources, and I know we can do it, and we are doing it.
The way you're tackling...
It's not a question of pride.
The way your government is tackling it militarily, you think that's the best way?
We are doing it militarily and politically, diplomatically. It's not just all gone. No. Our president just came back from Chad. We're talking to Cameroon, we're talking to Niger, and we're talking to other countries. It's not just gone, because these human beings you are going to kill, and they will kill other people too. War is the end weapon where negotiation and diplomacy fails.
And so what's the next step as far as trying to tackle the subject of Boko Haram in northern Nigeria?
We keep talking to them through proxies. It's not just war, and I hope very soon, as they've done, 150 handing in their weapons, I think sensibility at the end of the day will win. These guys will realize their folly and the danger they've done to people around the northeastern corner of Nigeria.
What you're just telling me, and what has been reported, of course, 150 of them, etc., who, according to the critics, well, that is just enough propaganda for the Goodluck Jonathan government,
no.
Especially when the elections are fast approaching.
I saw the photographs.
Well, we all saw it on the internet.
So, where are those people from?
Where are the girls who had been out there?
They will get them one day. You know, the issue of the girls is very sensitive. I feel for their parents, and I feel for the girls, especially because I have a daughter too. It's most unfortunate that happened. But in trying to save those girls, you have to be very careful. If you know where they are and you're rushing, the place could have been booby-trapped. Those girls could be shot dead. They don't care to die. The guards don't care to die, but they'll kill those girls. So you have to really find continuously a way of kind of cajoling them to get those girls to safety. If you try to use force, you're going to have regretful actions.
The subject of Islamization and the whole idea that Boko Haram seems to have been founded upon, do you think that as a country and the way the segment of your demographic is or your population is, you would have wished that, well, you were indeed without the highly populated Muslim now?
My parents were born Muslims. All my cousins on my mother's side are Muslims. So in Nigeria, religion is not really an issue. I'm telling you this because I know so. Those people in the northwestern corner, don't forget, majority of these people are not even Nigerians. They are people who are bigots, who have been brainwashed to do what they are doing. I have friends who are Muslims. In fact, I'm looking forward to Eid al-Fitr coming.
That's Adha.
The one we eat the ram.
Yes, the one for feast. That we all enjoy.
Because I've always enjoyed it as a kid. I look forward to it with a lot of joy. And yes, I'm a Christian, I'm a Methodist, but I don't see anything that will make me hate or distrust my Muslim cousins and friends.
It's good that you brought the point about you being a Methodist, and indeed you have been knighted, the
Yes.
Knight of St. John Wesley.
Yes.
And that's good.
Thank you.
Sir Ademola. Okay. but the point is, do you think as a country you can do better for the largely abject, poverty-stricken North than you have done so far?
The North is not abjectly stricken.
I'm not trying to equate it to what happens in other countries as we see it being reported across the media.
There's equal distribution of Nigerian wealth. The federal government distributes the resources of the country as agreed by the National Assembly through the Revenue Allocation Committee. So the North is not denied. Wealth is equally distributed. Even the VAT collected in Gombe will be shared by all the countries of the Federation. North is rich. That part of Nigeria is very rich. They have groundnut, they have mineral resources underground. There's a lot of gold also in the north. So to say Nigerian northern part, where do we get all our cattle from? All our pepper, grains, and the rest of it. In Nigeria is a question of everybody balancing everybody. Every region balancing the other region. So the north is extremely rich too.
If you go to the World Bank website, and indeed that has also, in many respects, as far as the information is concerned, replicated on the website of the CIA, you get to have an understanding of how there are not enough facilities, amenities for communities in northern Nigeria. Some of them don't have good access roads. Some of the schools there necessarily are not good enough. They don't have good access to health facilities. And these could also be worrying things for young people and easily be dissuaded by some of these inferences as far as Islamization is concerned.
Those facts are old and very incorrect. I've traveled through the north, Adamawa, Kano, Katsina myself. The best roads in Nigeria are in the north. And you can
those are main roads. Talk about the trunk roads that leads to communities, etc.
They're also there.
Those information on the World Bank and the CIA websites are old?
Yes. How do they get the pepper, the greens, and the rest to the market? The dry fish and the rest of it. Generally in Nigeria, and as in most part of Africa, most of the feeder roads are old and untarred. So it's not peculiar to northern Nigeria alone. Please. In the west, in the east, we have the same problem. Even worse in the east because of erosion crisis. I mean, erosion problem they have there. So to say that the north is not endowed or is suffering because of some policies, no.
So you have timelines. Do you hope that perhaps all these difficulties you're having with Boko Haram, you have a timeline and say this is the period when we can say it's the end of any insurgency? Or
nobody in the world can predict such. You are fighting with a faceless army. They don't have barracks. You don't know their chain of command. They disappeared after a while and they resurface. But I believe very soon they will be liquidated. All you need to do essentially is to cut off their supply sources, and then you kill their morale.
Just when many countries in West Africa were afraid that the incursions being made by Boko Haram could also trickle to their countries, we had the subject of Ebola. Well, your country recorded a number of cases, but so far
19 cases,
yes, but
7 deaths.
You seem to have managed it so well comparatively. We have the more stricken countries where the pandemic has been recording high deaths in Liberia,
It's
Sierra Leone,
unfortunate,
Guinea. Yes.
very unfortunate.
Yeah. How did the big brother Nigeria do it?
First of all, take away the issue of big brother. We're all a family in West Africa. What we did was a lot of publicity. And once Ebola started in those countries, we started making preparations. I guess before you came in here, they checked you with thermometer.
My temperature, it was 36.2.
They check you. That's one of the steps we took as a country. Before you get into Nigeria, through any border now, they will check you. If they see any symptoms, we've invested a lot. All this preparation were made ever before the thing got to Nigeria. And you remember during the last ECOWAS summit here, Nigeria reached out to West Africa. We had given Liberia $500,000, and then we pledged another $3 million to help fight Ebola in West African sub-region. So we have invested in the protective gear. We've invested in everything that can help us isolate anybody who has come in contact with the Ebola or we see the symptoms. So I think publicity, education, people wash their hands 4 or 5 times a day. I mean, education is on our television. The minister is always there saying something. I noticed Ghana is doing something like that too. I saw it on MTV the other day. I think that's what it takes. Ghana, just like Nigeria, has a head start. God forbid it rears its head here. I'm sure it will not be as destructive because you are kind of well geared and well prepared to fight this evil virus, you know, killing a lot of people. Over 3,000 people in West Africa now.
Now we're told that the case has reached high proportions. Now, how do the other countries also get to tackle it? Especially when we're talking about Liberia, Sierra Leone, who have been through some years of conflict, and so their health system is very largely depleted.
It's very unfortunate, you know, like the former Liberian ambassador, or ambassador who's now the High Commissioner, he was now the ambassador in London, was saying the other day, before the Civil War, Liberia has over 400 doctors. After the Civil War, it came down to about 150. Now in Liberia, you hardly have 15 doctors. Hospitals are closed. Same in Sierra Leone. People are afraid. But I think the United Nations, World Health Organization, the United Nations, there's this United Nations MEER body that has just been set up to eradicate Ebola. African Union with ASEOA, you know, African Union, something against Ebola, is also set up. And other countries are chipping in, like Nigeria. We're helping in any way. Of course, we're battling our own too, but we're still reaching out to our brothers and sisters. And don't forget the CDC, Center for Disease Control in the United States, is also helping. It cannot be done by these countries because their economy before was not even strong. Now it's being crippled. They need a lot of resources. They need a lot of international support. And I think those things are beginning to come in very heavily now.
Now,
it's a menace to the whole world.
We've come to a point where we've had porous borders, especially when there are fears for communities that live close to those borders. But then they would have to live within customary conditions of, you know, the normal African thing of living close to each other, having families and exchanging greetings, etc. How then do we remove the aspect of the ignorance and then try to put in the subject of the education and what the realities are for those communities?
You know, our borders are very porous.
Very.
If you put your gate there, where cars are passing. I'll walk through that bush. What is important, what we should be doing, is to educate our people. And at those borders, if possible, put giant billboards saying, look, Ebola is dangerous. Give all the implications. If you know where there are footpaths they trek through to get into your country, put small billboards there. Anyhow, you can advertise this thing in the languages they understand, even in their native languages. I think information, education, and cultural reorientation, all this washing of dead bodies and co, are things we should discourage in the fight against this wicked disease.
How do we strengthen our health institutions? We know we have the West African, of course, Health Organization, etc. How do we strengthen our health institutions to always be very futuristic about some of these epidemics?
Some of the money we put on frivolous things in our budget, put them in health, put them in education, of course, put them in your defense. Increase the budget for health care. Make health insurance available to almost anybody who wants it at a reasonable rate. Companies should also ensure that people that work for them are well cared for. Little things that we ignore can help change the tide of things in West Africa.
Okay. Very soon, politics will be a heated subject in your country. The elections will be coming on soon. And here in Ghana, you go around, you see members of the APC trying to rally each other and get some votes, etc.
APC?
APC, yes.
Yeah.
Their branches, they have chapters.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, do you think that the Goodluck Jonathan government is well placed to retain power?
I think so.
Why?
Because they are doing very well. They've given Nigeria their best. And Nigeria, don't forget, has been defined as the biggest economy in Africa in their own time. They've invested a lot in infrastructure. Light is improving. A lot of things are happening. I'm not campaigning, but I'm answering your question on the facts that are available to me. The government of Jonathan has done very well, and I think because of that, they could be returned to power.
Despite the criticism from the opposition, that
what does opposition do? The meaning of opposition?
When the accusations that corruption is not dealt with adequately, sometimes you see a number of strikes happening.
In those states of the opposition, is there no corruption? Are they not Nigerians? Are they immune?
Those are good excuses, somebody will say.
No, but they are not immune. I'm not saying there's no corruption in Nigeria. It's everywhere in the world, in every country. Even in China the other day, somebody was picked up and jailed for life. A rising star in their political system. Not one, not two. So there's corruption everywhere. The governor...
That's good excuse.
The
you
governor
can't say because there's corruption every day, it will not be tackled adequately.
Is in jail. The governor of Virginia is probably on his way to jail. So, I mean, we should not keep condemning Africa. I think we should, even though corruption is a terrible thing, I abhor it, I don't like it. It puts people at a disadvantage. But don't let's stigmatize ourselves.
You think we overdo it?
I think so.
You think the African media is part of it?
No. African media is doing their job of exposing it. They should expose corruption. But keep stigmatizing ourselves. Oh, Ghana is corrupt, Nigeria is corrupt, Guinea is the most corrupt, Sierra Leone is corrupt. No, there's corruption everywhere. We can fight it, but we should not make it. It's not part of our development.
What's unique about Goodluck Jonathan and his government?
It's unique because he has invested. Look, he has a transformation agenda, focusing on health, electricity, education, business, everything you can think of. Setting up this program and tackling them with vigor makes him very unique. And he's very much into the development of Nigeria. He's very interested in that country. He wants Nigeria to, look, I've followed his policies, I've followed his statements. I think he's a good president.
So he'll be re-elected?
I think so.
Well, we'll see how that goes as far as we're concerned. Now, very much recently, We've had more power cuts. It's not as if that we already don't have power rationing, because we have our own difficulties with the distribution. But due to what we call the West African gas pipeline project, we're supposed to be getting some millions of cubic meters of gas from your country. Then all of a sudden there were strikes. Initially there were difficulties earlier with technical difficulties, and so we don't get supplies as a country. You think that is fair?
The gas is back in Ghana.
Well, we do understand that.
When that gas went off in Ghana, do you realize it went off in Nigeria too?
That's what the news media said.
We didn't get gas because it was locked in Escavos. It's supposed to go to Itoki, near my hometown there. It never got there. So it's not Ghana specifically suffering. The whole of the countries, Benin, Togo, up to Ghana, that get the gas, including Nigeria itself.
Well, how does that become an excuse when you know that respective countries for which you have pact with, don't tend to get gas, and their economy tend to lose?
Where in the world will you have a trade union that says we are going on strike? Even in France, they cripple the economy. They don't care what happens to where the trade is going to. They think about their own country and themselves. These people went to lock that the gas supply because they have a problem with government. They're not thinking of Ghana or Togo or Benin, and the government cannot force them. The government cannot go and operate that thing because there are people trained specially to operate it. And when these people decide to hold Nigeria to ransom, it falls on other countries. It's very unfortunate. It's painful. But that's unionism across the world. You cannot stop these people, you know?
How do you hope that it doesn't happen again? Because from the way you're talking, you don't, as a country, you're just not going to give in as a government, are you?
To the issue of these guys?
Well, whichever union that tends to have any difficulty or disagreement.
We negotiate with them. The Minister of Petroleum Resources negotiated with them, and they went to open it. You just have to keep negotiating. Just have to keep negotiating. What can you do? They are your brothers and your sisters, and they are fighting for their right. And they believe they are right, so you have to talk to them. And then you meet yourself midway or halfway somehow. And invariably, after about 3 or 4 days, they open the gas again. It could happen tomorrow.
That's a threat, right?
No, it's not.
Well, despite all these, Ghana...
No, it could happen even in Ghana.
Well, despite all these, Ghana seems to have a very cordial, more than cordial relationship
We
with
are
Nigeria.
brothers. In Nigeria, and indeed in Ghana, if you don't have a wife, you have a husband, a brother or sister. You know, we are so interwoven. I have Ghanaians living with me for the past 15 years, doing very well. The 5 children were born in my home. They are my family. They come back to their village near Sogakope maybe once or twice in a year. And all over, look, Adadevo's father. I knew Adadevo's father.
The doctor who passed away?
Yes, the father was a professor in the University of Lagos. And I have family ties with Ghanaians here. People that have worked with my father, people that have related to us closely. I started eating kinky long before I came to Ghana, because they'll visit us and they'll bring kinky to us. So we have fantastic relationship, politically, economically. Our trade exchange is close to $3 billion now. And every day between Nigeria and Ghana, you have almost $10 million going through in tertiary trade.
How do we make sure in West Africa, and you are talking about close relationships that we have as respective countries, that we don't have borders that tend to give a lot of inhibitions when we want to cross with goods and services?
The governments of West Africa are working to ECOWAS of people.
They've been working about and talking about that since 1975. Never worked.
72 actually. ECOWAS of people are not ECOWAS as in ECOWAS. They want us to be borderless, so to say, so that goods and services
can
and
it be
people
possible?
Why not? European Union.
Why haven't we succeeded?
But you know, we're a developing subcontinent. We have a lot of personal, in countries, we have a lot of personal prejudice. We have a lot of, and then external influences too. Some from our former colonial leaders trying to maintain their zone or area of influence. So they try to discourage this kind of development, because I was thinking by now we'll be spending the echo the West African currency. But for some reasons, that is not happening yet.
Because we haven't met, as respective countries, the convergence criteria.
I think we want to work together, but maybe I suspect they are external. I don't want to start quoting now. There are external factors working against these things. For us in Nigeria, we are ready, and I know Ghana is ready. The headquarters of the Monetary Union is in Ghana here.
How do we make sure, as a sub-region, we trade a lot more among us here?
First of all, you know Nigeria is Ghana's biggest trading partner.
Well, we know that. That makes not the other francophone countries.
No, we still trade with Benin. We are probably Benin's biggest trading partner too, because Benin is next door to us. We do a lot of things together. We should, as a matter of fact, but there's been a great and significant progress in our trade exchange in Africa. When I was in the postgraduate school many years ago, over 30 years ago, the intra-African trade exchange was just 2%. But now we probably have about 45% because we are trading more. People are beginning to develop taste for tourism, for economy of, I don't remember how they call it, economy. You know, where you give comparative advantage to yourselves. I think it's developing more in Africa now. And I think someday we'll get there. It could be tough, but we'll get there.
What do you do for pleasure?
Play golf and read novels. And I'm an avid Scrabble player.
In Ghana?
In Ghana, yes. I play with my friends, with my wife. I play golf at Achimota. And I read a lot of Jeffrey Archer.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, thanks for speaking to me.
You're most welcome.
And it's been a pleasure.
Pleasure.
Well, thank you very much. So we've been speaking to His Excellency Ademola Oluseyi Anafuwakan. And he is Nigeria's High Commissioner to Ghana and giving us a lot more insight to various subjects, not only Ebola, the subject of Boko Haram in Nigeria, but how his government and indeed governments in West Africa need to tackle the subject of corruption. We hope to have him sometime again, and we'll have some good discussions on many subjects again. Thanks for joining me once again.
Welcome.
Well, so that's been it, our special edition of AM Talk. We're coming from the residence of the Excellency High Commissioner of Nigeria to Ghana, and we hope again to bring you more editions of this very subject on AM Talk. Back to the studio.